workshop about certification. Thank you. So Connie is recording the meeting. I hope there is no issue on your side. In any case, the idea is to record the presentation, the introduction of the meeting and the presentations, and then to stop recording when we will go to the discussion, so that everybody feels free to speak up during the discussion with no recording. So today we will not discuss corporate steel certification, but we will discuss how a certain number of initiatives have set up ways to support their communities to go towards certification. It's not only to bring people to certification, at least in our case, it was also because it helps people to improve the way they manage their data. And so there are several reasons to do this kind of support activities. You don't have the permission to amend the document. You were supposed to. There are a number of people who can amend, who already began to write. So normally it should work.
I've just checked, Françoise, and
Thank you.
I think
Thank
everybody
you.
does have the editor's rights on that. So
normally, yes. And many people are writing their names. So I guess that it's going on. So I see there are colleagues from Australia and people from who are in the USA, in Canada. So I see there is a new message.
okay, the person can get in now, Françoise.
Okay, thank you. So yes, so the idea was to have an exchange between these initiatives. It was first something I was personally interested to know about, how other people are doing that, how people are supporting their own community towards certification, the data repositories. And so the first aim was to put us in the same room and so that we exchange on how we do that. And then we thought it could be of interest for other people, and the number of people who are around their screen today shows that it's indeed of interest for many people. And I guess there may be several reasons to attend. So we will not discuss CTS certification again. We will discuss how we are supporting our communities to go towards certification. The way we have organized the meeting is that there are short talks by different initiatives. We have national initiatives which are at the national level. One is on the hands of a European project, a project funded by the European Commission. And the two last talks are about initiatives which are thematic, one at the European level for a thematic community and another one at the national level for another thematic community. So we will see what gets out of those talks. Then, of course, there will be time for Q&A from the audience or from the other speakers to their colleagues. And then we would like to discuss a bit what worked, what was difficult, what could be done better, to try to understand if we can define best practices to do this kind of support. So maybe we can go on. We have no one in the waiting room, Connie, now?
No, everybody's in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we can begin, and Richard from Australia will talk about the Australian initiatives. Go on, Richard. Oops.
You're muted, Richard, by the way.
That's better. Hi, everyone from Melbourne. I'm down here in Melbourne in Australia, a long way from Europe and Canada, but welcome. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about what we've been doing in Australia. We could actually call it down here the Trusted Data Repository Community. And Natalia is in the room from the Ocean Data Network, was the first certification under that process. One of the things we like to do is an acknowledgement of the first Australians and pay respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. In Melbourne, that's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation who've had a continuous connection with this place for 60,000 years. So that's puts it in some context. This is a little bit about ARDC, but mostly this talk isn't about ARDC, but ARDC is about supporting researchers to get competitive advantage through data and looking after high quality data assets. So putting data sets into trusted repositories is an important part of what we're trying to do. So I've just got a few slides. The first one is we did this in 2 phases. In 2016-17, we funded through projects 3 large groups to go through the certification process. That's CSIRO, the National Science Agency, the Australian Data Archive, which is a social science repository at the Australian National University in Canberra, and the National Imaging Facility, which is a national funded imaging infrastructure for researchers around the country, and 2 of those were able to get certified. And then in 2019, we decided to start a community to support organizations that included universities, repositories, and government agencies to go through the process. We advertised in our newsletter and 20 organizations responded. And Natalia was here, was the first one that was certified, but we had 6 submissions by 2022. 2 of those have been certified now, and 3 are still working on submissions. This is how we did it. We first started having monthly meetings, and we basically spoke as a group for a year, kind of learning about certification processes, trying to understand what Core Trust Seal was and how much work would be involved. So we had CSIRO and ADA talk to the wider group about how much effort went through. Then we did a number of writing sessions. We did half-day pre-writing sessions. We did 9 2-hour writing sessions. And then we would meet every 3 weeks for 2 hours to do polishing sessions. So that went on for 18 months. And then we had 6 organizations coming together on Zoom because we were separated by thousands of kilometers apart and through COVID. And then they were able to review full drafts of the documents for each other. And we have an annual e-research conference in October, and we presented at that and publicised to the wider research community in Australia, the research infrastructure community, what was going on. Now that those 6 applications went in at the end of last year, I think Natalia at the Ocean Data Network was a year ahead of the others. Then it's been a bit quieter this year, so we've only been meeting like a couple of times a year, so kind of quarterly while we're waiting for new organizations to join. What did we get out of it? I think one of the things was that it was much more fun doing it as a group than on your own. I was very concerned it was a lot of work, and there was a really human component to be able to share the challenges. I wish I'd had that and more when I was writing my PhD. It can be quite an isolating experience, though some people reported they could blast through a draft in like a week. For most people, it took a lot longer. It was very time consuming. We had estimates that it would take about 4 months full time of work And I think Natalia estimated 100+ hours. Oh, this link here in the slides, which you can get off the Google document, are slides just as the organizations were putting in their application, and tells a bit more detail about their experience and what they liked about it and what was challenging. So you're welcome to dig into that a bit more. That's from the conference. There were some pain points around actually submitting on the Core Trust Seal website. The technology seemed a little bit delicate, and being far away, it's a little bit hard to get, I think, support. And the other thing is we have to be very patient. We're waiting for new repositories to become interested in certifying. And so we have to be able to fit into their timetable. So we've been kind of ticking over the community, waiting for like the next rocket ships to get onto the launch pad. I put a few links there to our homepage for the web, for the community, and our one-page intro, which has the why would you want to do this, which I haven't gone into. And that's all from me. Thank you very much. That's
Thank
the
you very
Australian
much.
perspective.
Thank you very much, Richard. If you have questions, you can write them in the chat, and there will be time also for answering. Now we go to Canada. Lee? Maybe you are muted.
Yes, I'm here now. Great. Can everybody see my my presentation?
Yes, we see your presentation and we hear you.
Excellent. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Lee Wilson. I'm Director of Research Data Management at the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you today from Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And I'd like to thank Françoise and the other organizers for inviting me to speak with you this morning as a part of this important panel discussion. So during today's lightning talk, I will be speaking to the experience that we had in Canada operating a funded cohort to support Core Trust Seal certification for Canadian repositories. So first, a little bit of context. What is the Digital Research Alliance of Canada, or my organization? So this is a relatively new organization in Canada. It was established in 2019. It's known as the Alliance, and not to be confused with the Research Data Alliance. It plays a key role in the Canadian ecosystem as a leader of federated operations for critical digital research infrastructure, or DRI as we call it, which includes advanced research computing or high-performance computing, research data management, research software, and cybersecurity. In addition to operations, we're also a funder of DRI, as well as a leader in strategy. So as a part of its core activities, we maintain an RDM team in our operations division that works with community partners to support a host of services and programs that benefit Canadian researchers. And all of this is designed to enable compliance with open science mandates from journals and funders, as well as act as complements to services that could be delivered locally. A big part of our context for Core Trust Seal comes from our network of experts. So this is a major driver for RDM in Canada. It's a volunteer grassroots community of practice of data and information management professionals. And they come from post-secondary and other research institutes across Canada. So many of you will be very familiar with the Research Data Alliance, and the network of experts functions very similarly, with the Alliance team acting as stewards and facilitators of the network and its various expert and working groups. One of these groups is the Data Repositories Expert Group, which has a mandate to bring together representatives from key repository stakeholder communities, and in general provides high-level coordination and advice around repository development in Canada. So DREG, as it's known, informed by similar groups internationally, had the idea to launch a Core Trust Seal cohort in Canada, which then continued to act in an advisory capacity throughout the project's lifespan. We also put together at the very beginning an organizing committee that was assembled to oversee the project. So moving to the project itself, In February 2021, the Alliance launched the Core Trust Seal Certification Canadian Support Cohort and Funding Initiative. It was a combined call aimed at providing an opportunity for repositories to apply to join the cohort community, as well as seek funding in support of advancing the requirements for Core Trust Seal. So awardees of the funding were eligible to receive up to $10,000 each. The objectives of the program were to advance fair and trust for digital repositories in Canada, to support excellence and strengthen confidence in Canadian data repositories, and to foster excellence in Canadian research by supporting a cohort of repositories in achieving, or, and this is important, making meaningful progress towards the achievement of Core Trust Seal certification requirements. So it was not a requirement that every repository that was a part of the cohort at the end of the funding cycle, which was just 1 year, actually achieve Core Trust Seal. So unpacking the cohort itself, we had 17 organizational participants, 12 of whom were funded and 5 were unfunded. And then we had one cohort within a cohort, and that represented a network of Dataverse-driven repositories operating from a single hosted instance of the platform. So we have a national scale Dataverse service that many of our academic institutions are a part of. And so that a whole network joined as that cohort within a cohort. So we contained a mixture of generalist, as I mentioned, sort of often academic library-based repositories, as well as disciplinary repositories from across several domains. Most of the cohort members were Canadian repositories, but the community, but not the funding call, was open to international participation, and we did have one cohort member from the University of Geneva in Switzerland. Throughout the program, we offered a variety of activities, quite similar to ARDC, and we started with an initial survey of to the cohort members to understand where they were in the process, what their needs were, what their expectations were, and any ideas they had for activities they'd like to see us put on. We ran multiple communications platforms, including a Slack workspace, as well as a document repository and a project wiki. We developed a self-assessment tool. We had 3 mandatory workshops on different topics related to curation, preservation, and repository policies, as well as optional pre-workshop meetups that would happen 2 weeks before the workshop. We had optional reading groups for folks who wanted to read, the Core Trust Seal documentation and any supporting literature around certification. And then we also had a program for optional peer review of draft applications. So in terms of the outcomes, it was a successful project. All of the cohort members advanced their Core Trust Seal applications meaningfully per the program's objectives. We did have one member submit their application and receive feedback. Another completed their draft and submitted it for internal review or peer review. Whereas others worked on policy development and application writing throughout the course of the year. When we did our end of project survey and reporting, we found that cohort members found the web page, so our document repository, and the workshops to be the most beneficial activities for their application development. Members also stated that they very much appreciated the pre-workshop chats, the writing groups, and the peer review option. And one bit of feedback that we got suggested that we should have started with the workshop on organizational policies so as to set sort of a foundation for that core piece. So were we to rerun the program, we would likely shift the order of the workshops. In terms of networking and a sense of community, this was a big one. So cohort members had opportunities to connect and engage with one another, as well as with external experts from different organizations. And the reporting indicated that they had learned a lot from these interactions, as well as benefited from the close connection that they had to the Alliance RDM team through this program. Cohort members developed a sense of community and talked about the benefits of moral support of a community going through a process like this, and especially flagged the breakout rooms and the writing groups as being of great value there. So just in general, I would say that they valued the collective approach and then the informal support that comes from being a part of a cohort. So in conclusion, we would deem that the project was successful in building capacity and confidence in Canadian data repositories. Cohort members made meaningful progress on their applications. They did express a desire for support for the cohort to continue. And at this time, the Alliance is considering future opportunities to support repository certification efforts. That's it for me today. Thank you. And I'd be happy to take any questions. Françoise, I believe you
There is a comment from Richard in the chat. You can ask your questions in the chat. Thank you, Lee. And now I think it's France, and I have to share my screen. So we have, this was prepared with Gilles Connexion, who is also here with us today. And you will see on which things we are working together. So the context is the context of RDA France, which started in March 2018 as one of the national nodes of one of the RDA Europe projects funded by the European Commission. We had decided from the very beginning that certification of data repository had to be a priority for RDA France. And as I said in the introduction, the real reason was to improve repository practices by exposing them to the criteria and making them think about their own case with respect to the criteria. We have also a national context which is very favorable because certification is included in the National Plan for Open Science since its first version, which was in 2018, in which one of the actions was implement the certification process for data infrastructures. And the second version of the national plan says continue the certification process, citing core trust seal for data repositories. So this means that we have support at the national level, and we had RDA France, which was already beginning activities on that topic, and we built up a working group on certification of data repositories and services, which is common between RDA France and the Data College of the National Committee for Open Science. So the working group began in 2020, and at that time, 2 French repositories had been certified by Core Trust Seal. So the working group, the initial charter was to promote awareness of certification and procedure and criteria, particularly Core Trust Seal, support certification process, promote dissemination of best practices for trusted repositories, create a national map of certification, and liaise with Core Trust Seal and Fair is Fair, which was the European project you will hear about in a minute. We have a mailing list. If you are French speaking and you're interested, you can register to be a member of a mailing list. There are not so many messages, but we inform people about the activities. One of the core activities has been to organize workshops on certification and Core Trust Seal. And we had 11 such workshops since 2019. It's a standing workshop on the RDA France annual meetings, but we also have meetings in between. So the basic workshop is Introduction to Certification and the History of Core Trust Seal, and a discussion of Core Trust Seal criteria. We also had focused workshop on granularity, an advanced workshop for astronomy, a workshop more focused on research infrastructures, and we had an international workshop, also an introductory one in French, in the framework of the 10-year anniversary of the RDA. We developed a tool to follow the preparation of CTS application, which is called Crusoe. So here is the page for Crusoe. And I will say a word about Crusoe in a minute. And we also provide support for administrative fields to CTS certification, because we got financial support from the National Fund for Open Science, which means that we are really in the national strategy somewhere for open science. So the outcomes, it's that we have a countrywide impact. We had more than 300 colleagues attending at least one of the workshops. These are repository managers, but not only repository managers, also people involved more generally in research data management, in research organizations, universities, and repositories. So we aim to bring people towards a better way of managing data has been worked out through the workshops in particular. Crusoe is available in French and English. It's flexible enough. It has been easy to include new versions of CTS criteria. It's an open software. Additional languages can be added, and we are working to Europeanize it in as an EOSC service. The result in practice, the aim was to improve practices, but also to bring people towards certification. We have 3 more French repositories certified. Starting from 2, we have 3 more, plus 1, which is an international organization. And there are many candidates, but for the moment, they are discussing with Corpus still about their application. The aim we have now, and we have begun to do that, is to establish a network of French certified repositories and repositories on the way to certification. And we had the first meeting in October during the French annual meeting of the RDA France. And it enabled the newly certified repositories and the older ones to present themselves and to begin to discuss together. So that's it. And so the next is Maaike for the Netherlands. Go on, please.
Yes, thank you, Françoise. So my name is Maaike Verburg. I work at DANS, which is the Dutch National Repository and Center of Expertise on Research Data. And I will highlight a little bit of a different kind of certification support that is ongoing in the Netherlands, namely the signposting website that we have on the topic of certification. So in collaboration with the Dutch Digital Heritage Network, DANS maintains this so-called signpost website, which is a very broad, low entry level informative resource that contains information on the what, the why, and the how of certification. It details the Cortros seal process step by step and how a repository can best prepare and engage in each phase. It also shares tips and tricks from other repositories that have already gone through the process before. And these are proven to be one of the most valuable assets that we have on the website, as they most often actually encourage other repositories that are still doubtful to go ahead and try for certification. Next to that, the signpost website also contains links to materials, including professional Dutch translations of the Cortros seal requirements and the extended guidance. So these materials can help improve the applications from Dutch organizations, as they could clarify some uncertainties that get lost in translation, or just give some more clarity on the information that is being requested and could be provided for each requirement. So of course, all the Dutch applications are still submitted in English, but in the preparatory phase, these translated materials really prove very helpful for the organizations to really get their information together for each requirement. So the information on the website that we have is very generic and is used very widely across the Netherlands. But the focus of our additional support and development is aimed at the Dutch Heritage Institutes or archives, so museums and our other archives, libraries. It's still quite a wide and diverse group. The Signpost website is maintained by me as a manager, and I am supported by an expert group from the community that all comes together and helps me consult, develop, and engage the community around the topic. So from this platform of our rather static website, we do organize community events around the topic. We provide input into the revisions of Court-Facile, and we try to keep the topic alive and active in the Dutch landscape as a whole. Across all of the Netherlands, there are currently 12 repositories with a valid Court-Facile certification, and more are working to achieve it or currently working on renewing expired certifications. So we do see that there is actually quite a big group that come together on this topic and that benefit from having this signposting information here. So we have actively supported this website for a couple of years now and organizing a couple of community events to really see how we can make sure that this resource remains as relevant as it can be, but also to a larger extent trying to see what additional activities and community engagement are really desired by the group that we do this all for. Relating to the concept of certification, but also just wider trustworthiness and preservation, because we do not see that certification always has to be the end all be all, as we've heard multiple times already before today. So in the last year, a clear wish that we've heard in the community is that they would really like to come together in a network. So all organizations and individuals in the Netherlands that deal with this topic or have interest in the topic would really like to have a way to have more direct communication with each other in the form of a network. So currently we do present some peer information on the website, but as I said, it's quite static and it's not a direct way of communication. So there's this wish to facilitate more of a direct link with each other, room for peer exchange, room for identifying commonalities, maybe developing things together and just trying to make the topic come more alive, because we hear a lot that the organizations that are working towards certification feel quite alone during the process, even though they have been learning more about the commonalities that the other repositories also go through. So this wish has just started to arise a little bit in this year, and next year we will really kick off the process of getting this group of Dutch certification fanatics together, and we will kick this up with a national event and then try to make sure that the way we go about forming this network will really fit with the needs of the community. So there's a lot of ongoing activity for the next year where we really get to see what kind of further support we can branch into. And that's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, somehow we stay in the Netherlands. We will go to the European level. Ingrid?
So,
You have to unmute yourself. Yes, go on.
you hear me, see me, and see my slides? Never set. Okay, so my name is Ingrid Dillo, and I am a colleague of Maaike, also working at DANS. And I'm going to use my slot to talk a little bit about the repository certification support program that we ran in a European project called FAIR's Fair. That project ran between 2019 and 2020, and the mission of that project really was to implement the FAIR principles in policies, practices, tools, services, and data of the European Open Science Cloud. So the context was that EOSC. As you can see on this slide that shows the main results of that project, you can see that a big chunk of the work was dedicated towards certification. And one strand was specifically focused, as you can see, on providing support and guidance for certification of data repositories. Now, for that support and guidance, we had a two-pronged approach. So on the one hand, we provided support to, you could say, more advanced repositories, where we offered them support to improve their technical interoperability. And in that strand, we overall supported 12 repositories. There was another strand of work that provided support to, let's say, less advanced repositories. And that support was really focused on helping them to prepare for certification. And in that part of the project, of the program, we supported 10 repositories in total. Halfway during the project, we added one more element to that mix, and that was the element of organizing repository support webinars in a series that was open to everybody. So all who were interested could follow that strand of work in this support program. Now, a few words about that, one of those strands, the strand focusing on the certification. On the right-hand side of this slide, you see the different phases that we designed throughout the lifetime, throughout the 3 years that the project ran. And on the left-hand side, you can see the different elements that we covered in that program. So we organized workshops for the repositories in the program. They, of course, prepared their self-assessments, for which they received one-on-one support by mentors from the project, but there was also a lot of room to provide peer support between themselves. Another important element in that program was that we also provided funding to the repositories participating, €10,000 for each of them. And that funding was meant to cover, on the one hand, the administrative fee of Core Trust Seal, but also to cover the human resource that they had to bring in to prepare the self-assessment and to do the work to be prepared for Core Trust Seal certification. The results were not bad at all, and I think that it was also much better than many of the repositories themselves thought at the beginning of the process. So after 3 years, 9 out of the 10 repositories that were in the program submitted their Core Trust Seal application, and all 9 of them also in the end got their Core Trust Seal, and the 10th one came a little bit later in time, but also succeeded in getting the Core Trust Seal. So with respect to the experiences, first, the experiences of the repositories themselves. Like I said, they exceeded everybody's expectations, so that was really, really good. It also became clear that the most useful elements for the repositories themselves were, on the one hand, the support workshops that we organized, also very much the peer review of the self-assessments, and I think that's a very important element that I've also seen elsewhere. When you have like a trusted groups of colleagues, where you can share not only the things that you can do very well already, but also share the difficulties, that really helps a lot. The one-on-one support by the mentors was also appreciated. And it also showed us that having that peer exchange and that shared learning really helps in decreasing the time that is needed to create an application. On the side of the support team, we also tried to catch the lessons learned from their side. And all of these experiences, by the way, are captured in 2 documents, and you see the links on the 2 slides. With the support teams, I think one of the things that came out very clearly is, especially when you have such a generic, wide group of diverse group of repositories, it's important that in your support team you have people with different expertise and knowledge, like people who are more on the technical side, people who know more about the policy side of things. But also it's important to have people with different disciplinary backgrounds, because for the different disciplines, the interpretation of all of these requirements is also sometimes a little different. Now, like I said, Fairs Fair finished in 2022. We now have a follow-up European funded project called Fair Impact. And also in that project, we try to provide support through open calls to repositories. But here we are covering a bit of a broader spectrum of support offers, not only certification, but we also try to come up with offers that help repositories improve more generically their fair enabling capabilities. And with that, I think I will hand over to Françoise.
Thank you. I have to say that at least one of the French repositories which obtained certification went through your process, at least one, and the international one also. So it was efficient, yeah. Eschok, Hervé?
Hi everyone, hopefully I'm all sharing and up and running, so all good. Hi, yeah, I'm just popping in to talk about the social sciences and humanities open cloud, the SHOC work to do core trust seal support, which I worked on, which was led by my colleague Marie Klimola from Tampere University and FSP Ancestor. The project ran for 40 months until April 2022. It was very large, 47 partners. Overall from SSH S3 landmarks and projects and various SSH data infrastructures. The big goal across the project was to look at the disciplinary silos we're all a bit stuck in and start moving into a more cloud-based infrastructure across the different scholars, and with the FAIR data and tools and training services as a critical aspect of all that as well. It did cover the whole data lifecycle and very strongly stuck with the FAIR principles, but from the very beginning, it was pretty clear that the FAIR vision and the overall EOS is a fairly complicated space. We need to think about these various aspects, but at the heart of it, a lot of this was looking at the repository registries and what they do, the repositories, and the associated repository evaluation criteria. A lot of this work came out of the trust and quality assurance and impact work, basically improving trust in and the quality of the SHOC repositories. So by supporting them and by exploring the trust landscape more broadly and providing feedback to certification bodies, we had a lot of people involved who were involved across a range of different previous support efforts as well, which was highly beneficial. The activities with the main user focus across this was that the core trust seal certification support, which was the selected standard. There was an open call. There was a great range of one-on-one support. We had mentors assigned to each of the people involved, a series of workshops, and primarily the review of the self-assessments there as well. There were 14 supported repositories, and the support process ran from autumn 2020 until spring 2022. Associated with this, there was a survey for the various SHOC organizations with a number of responses and a chunk of desk research on the 96 repositories from the 4 SHOC infrastructures, CESTA, Clarin, Daria, and Iris. We had an okay geographical spread. We had an okay disciplinary spread, sort of from within the social science world. It was interesting to drill into the disciplinary aspects, work out where there were more similarities, yet still more differences down at that level as well. It was all highly valuable. And a lot of this was looking at what the priorities were, or the more challenging requirements were for an individual repository, and really drilling down into those and looking at the different key aspects of each requirement and how we could kind of really offer some specific support from across the board. We got support from across the various mentors, but also from the organizations who were involved. So it really was a collegial effort across everything. In terms of the outcomes, well, 6 of those repositories focused on the self-assessment part of the process. There was no intention to apply during the project lifetime. They made an assessment of their own maturity and they made the assessment of their own targets. And we felt that was a perfectly reasonable way for us to work through this. Of the 8 repositories with core trust seal certification as their goal, 3 submitted during the project, 3 just after. 1 had insufficient resources, but I know has made progress since, and 1 transitioned onto support from a follow-on project. And this project basis is something that we'll see over and over again. One of the challenges is getting continuity of support. And again, the outcomes we got and the feedback we got. Certainly first-time certification takes time and resources and benefits from access to that repository expertise. This was in a number of cases especially challenging for smaller repositories, but I will say that one very small brand new repository basically designed themselves from the ground up and ended up with Core Trust Seal at the end of the process. So your mileage may well vary. To reflect some of the other comments, there was more than 50% of the repositories who were interested in seeing a wider network of existing and expiring trustworthy digital repositories, which was part of what we looked at for sustaining the trust activities after shock. And there really was a lot of benefit in the support process in facilitating the self-assessments and identifying targets for improvement, including the policies and procedures which provide evidence, which is something that came up repeatedly, was not just the certification, but also the practice and the improvement. There is plenty of further information in the slides, both from during the project and subsequently. A lot of work went on around that, which I would urge you to have a look at. And just finally, looking at this and where this goes next, we have multiple groups of repositories involved in multiple ERICs within the European landscape. In this particular case, they're now involved in the SSH Open cluster for the social sciences and humanities. And the goal will be to look at where we can kind of benefit from all of these, look at their experience, look at where we've got shared evidence or shared practice, and look at where shared policy, maybe at the umbrella level, can support everybody below that level in providing evidence for future Core Trust Seal applications. And that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hervé. And last but not least, Marine. We go to Ocean now.
Do you see my screen correctly? I mean the full slide?
No, you don't. We don't see your screen for the moment.
Sorry, I'll try again.
Je peux passer. I can go through your slides, which are in the.
Yeah, I have an error. I don't know why. I can't share my screen.
Okay, so.
I'm sorry. It's an error. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm Marine Bernet. Nice to be here today. I'm working at the French Research Institute for the Exploitation of the Sea. And I will do this presentation on behalf of the Copilot project team and the Audatis team. So this presentation will focus on the Copilot project. The Copilot project aimed, among others, to help the Audatis French Ocean Data and Services Centers to engage into the Core Trust Seal certification process. It also aims at helping them to identify their level of fairness of their data, but that is another thing that I won't talk about today, but it's quite complementary, in fact. So the Copilot project was very important for the Audatis data cluster, because so Audatis, it's the French Ocean Data Cluster, and it is composed of 9 data and services centers that are managing marine in situ or satellite data. And Audatis aims at harmonizing data management processes to standardize and verify marine data in France, and also provide an easier discovery, access, and reuse of marine data collected by the French organizations. So in helping those DSCs that are part of Audatis to engage into this Core Trust Seal certification process was really important to help them better harmonize their processes, to identify where there were areas for improvement, and in the end to really provide a more robust, more solid and reliable Audatis infrastructure to provide access and long-term preservation of marine data in France. So it was really aligned with the Audatis goals. Next slide, please. So how it was done? It was done through a project called Copilot, who was conducted between 2020 and 2022. It was funded by the French National Research Agency, and it involved several partners of the Audatis data cluster, that are the Audatis data and services centers, and also Audatis management team members. So the methods, so each Audatis DSC who was involved in the project followed webinars and training about certifications that were given by RDA France. They also were given a guided lecture of CTS criteria to really go criteria by criteria and explain the requirements. And then they were given support from the Copilot team to prepare the CTS application. So this was conducted through regular follow-up meetings with each DSC to prepare certification documents. Also more generic, more global technical workshops that were involving all the DSCs together. Then each DSC goes through the self-assessment of all the criteria, and also through a cross-assessment among the DSCs using the Crozio, a dedicated tool that Françoise mentioned before. And they benefited from the experience of Seal experts that were involved in, that were members of the advisory group of the project, and also from the experience of a certified data repository, Repositories, that is also a member of Audatis. And the Copilot project helped or financed the Seal application fees for all the DSCs in the project. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. So the results are that 4 data and services centers that are part of Audatis applied to the Seal certification by the end of the project. They are now in the process of exchanges with Seal reviewers to improve their applications. And one one data repository renewed its certification to Seal. It's the Ifremer data repository that includes 3 data and services centers of Audatis. So the main benefits overall of this project, the Audatis data and services centers really appreciated the project because it helps them to clarify their data flows, to also to clarify and improve their internal procedures. For example, they identified some weakness in data storage, and through discussions and collaborations, they implemented a new data replication procedure between one DSC to another one. So this really helped to highlight areas for improvement and have a to know where there is things to improve and where there are solutions to be found. And they also appreciated the fact that it helped them collaborate and define responsibilities inside their own data and services center internally, but also collaboration, collective approach with all the DSCs within the Copilot project was really helpful to identify, to get ideas, to have feedback from similar data repositories engaged in the same process at the same time. So I think that's all for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marine. So this is the end of the lightning talks. Maybe, Connie, we can stop recording now.